We started dating in 1992 when we were both 17. We're both 45 now and have been together ever since. She's the only woman I've ever been with my entire life. We married 5 years later at 22, fresh out of college. A year later, we had our first of 2 children, both boys, now 22 and 17. I gave 23 years to her, built her a house, worked my butt off to give her the life she wanted. Sure, we had rough patches, but what marriage doesn't? Even in the worst of times, we found a way to pull through and come out the other side better, which made the discovery of her affair that much more jarring. Flashback to March 2020, when I first got the feeling something was off. For a good 2 months prior, we were in a funk. I was on the mend from reconstructive knee surgery after blowing out my ACL in the fall of 2019, but I was still lacking in movement. At the time, I only had about 55% range of motion in my knee. This took a toll on many aspects of our lives. I was out on workers' comp due to the job-related injury, and I was unable to do my usual household duties. So, a lot got backed up. My sons would do what they could, but tasks only I was capable of doing had to be put on the back burner, or my wife had to do them, which she wasn't pleased with. Things also crawled to a standstill in the bedroom between us. It had already slowed down prior to my injury, but in the state I was in at the time, it completely stopped. During these months, I'll call her Kathy, was spending more time hanging out with coworkers after work. Between November 2019 and March 2020, it was a regular occurrence for her. Naturally, I thought nothing of it. In the 23 years I'd been with her, I'd never had any reason to worry or not trust her. We both had our own friends, and we had mutual friends as well. I go hang out with my friends all the time, and there was no issue. It was around January of this year that I noticed something odd. Kathy started getting noticeably distant with me. Sure, we were in a funk, but she'd never denied me affection to that point. The usual hugs and kisses she'd give me came to a halt. Her phone was attached to her hand long before my suspicion grew, but she'd always share and show me things she discovered on the web, DIY ideas, recipes on Pinterest, memes, all kinds of stuff. But she was now being guarded about her phone. Even her interactions with me became more snippy, as if she couldn't be bothered. Now, we're in March, and COVID has arrived, and New York City is locked down. Our chosen careers fall under the essential designation, so neither of us have to work from home. I'd just been recently cleared to return to work after 5 months on the shelf, and I was eager to get back after it. 5 months on my butt rehabbing my knee and not being able to do physical stuff drove me nuts. For context, I enjoy physical activities. I'm an avid martial artist and typically in the gym 4 days a week. On top of all the home projects I did. Within a week or two of the lockdown, my soon-to-be ex-wife alerts me that she's going to have to start putting in extra hours again. I think nothing of this because of her field. Of course, I was under the assumption it'd be every other day, but no, it was every day. And not just an hour or two. She'd come home 3 or more hours later and go straight to the shower, spend a little time with me, and a little time with our 17-year-old. Our 22-year-old lives with her grandmother. We started getting intimate again once my knee was better, but as you'd probably guess, she wasn't mentally or emotionally present for it, which I noticed quickly. By April, the picture started getting clearer to me. All the signs were pointing to the idea that she was having an affair. That's when I decided I needed to find answers. So, I scoured the internet on things I should be looking for as signs of infidelity in one's partner, and sure enough, she was pretty much ticking all the boxes on such behavior. My search inquiry advanced to how I find proof. I started with her social media, looking at her Facebook entries from months prior. It was pretty much the usual pics of us and our sons, pics with her and her friends, and more than a few pics of her nights out with coworkers. In these pics, it was a mixed bag of her closest friends from work and a couple of folks I'd never met from her work. But I saw one recurring thing in a number of these pictures, one guy in every picture. He was rather uncomfortably close to her, with his arm around her shoulder or his hand on her lower back, way too close for a guy I'd never personally met. Needless to say, that put a sour taste in my mouth. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst was the fact that apparently, this dude is a friend of hers on Facebook and follows her on Instagram. So, I go to look up his Facebook account, and wouldn't you know it, I'm blocked. Why the hell am I blocked from seeing this guy's Facebook account? But he's friends with her on Facebook. Yep, now I'm in Batman detective mode. At this point, I wasn't even trying to deny it. I knew she was cheating on me with this guy. My mission was to find out for how long. Over the course of April and May, that's what I did. Oh, I never had any clue about the depth of info you could secure from phone text and email records until then. We have a family plan cell phone package, and I was able to pull up quite a bit of data. My soon-to-be ex-wife's data history was telling. The two most frequent numbers she had interacted with from October 2019 to April 2020 were my own and a number I'd never seen before. Take a wild guess whose number it was. A quick check on Google confirmed it was the dude from the photos who blocked me on Facebook. We'll call him AP, because that's what he is. Again, the picture becomes even clearer at this point, but a lot of their messages and texts were disjointed. She was deleting a lot of them. I knew she was cheating on me with this guy, but nothing in the data could serve as a smoking gun. It's at this point that I told my best friend Oz what I had found. He asked me if I had confronted her with what I had, and I said no because I felt like it wasn't enough. That's when he told me about an app that I could download to apparently spy on her communications in real time. I won't say the name as I don't know the rules of that on here. I got it installed, synced up my data plan, and waited. Within days of doing so, I finally saw it, a text string between the two of them, talking about how much fun they'd had the previous night and making plans to do it again that weekend. Boom, gut punch. To say I was completely devastated was an understatement. I guess that moment counts as my D-Day. For the next 2 days after, I was just broken. I actively distanced myself from her during those 2 days immediately after D-Day, which she noticed. She tried to console me and asked me what was wrong, but I'd brush it off and leave her presence. I couldn't even look at her. This woman, who I gave 23 years of my life to, who I have given everything I could and more to as a husband, stepped outside our marriage for a guy just 5 years older than our eldest son. By the third day, I wasn't even sad anymore, I was pissed. I contacted Oz to let him know my suspicion was confirmed, and he asked me if I had confronted her yet. My answer was no, and I told him I wanted payback. I didn't want to just divorce her, I wanted to destroy her and leave her life in shambles. Effing ruin her. It was going to take time to do so, and I devised a plan. In my readings and research on infidelity, I had seen a quote that resonated with me: "The enemy of infidelity is unpredictability," or something to that ilk. That was going to be the basis of my plan. I was going to make her life hell on wheels while also secretly planning my exit strategy. So now we're in early June, and I've still got the app installed. Pretty much every night, I'm gathering as much data as I can, seeing their back and forth messages. They're talking like it's a full-blown relationship, with sexting, lovey-dovey romantic stuff, nudes, the whole effing bag. At that point, I had stopped looking at any of it. I was just collecting info and cataloging it on my private FBS server. Meanwhile, I started doing things out of the ordinary. I started going out at odd times, coming home even later than she does. In her presence, I'm on my phone a lot more than usual. When she asks what I'm up to, I just simply say, "Just stuff," and put my phone away. I'd also changed my login info on everything so she couldn't access any of my stuff. For our entire marriage, we'd never hidden anything from each other. But right around, I'm assuming the start of her affair, she'd changed her password on Facebook, as well as on her phone, stating she had to because of the security breaches in recent months. By this point, I'd clued in my best friend Oz on my plan, as well as my older and only sister and 2 more of my closest friends. These are people I trust with my life, and I swore them to secrecy. For context, Oz and I have been friends since we were kids, and the other friends, Joey and Tina, we've known since high school. Keep in mind Tina, she comes into play down the road. July arrived, and my soon-to-be ex-wife was in full paranoia mode. She was texting and calling me a lot more frequently, asking me if I'd be home when she gets home, when I'm coming home, and more. I could see the seed planted in her head from the previous month starting to sprout, especially in her communication with AP. She was confiding in him, telling him about her doubts and confusion, stating that I was getting cold and distant. In the interim of these interactions with AP, she suggested that maybe they should stop meeting up at our house because she had no idea if I'd just show up. Confirming that yes, she'd had this thought in my home. Thanks, Kathy. AP asked her if she was worried about me potentially cheating on her in that specific communication, which actually pissed her off. I can't even begin to describe the level of joy and how many laughs I got out of reading that exchange. My cheating wife was arguing with her affair partner over whether she was mad her husband could be cheating on her. Oh, the effing irony. Now bear in mind, I'm not hooking up with anyone when I leave. I'm usually at Oz or Joey's, throwing back some booze, watching fights, and spending time with my brothers. Or I'm at my big sister's house, hanging around with her and my brother-in-law, who's like an older brother to me. My sis is 52, and her hubby is 58. She had told him about my soon-to-be ex-wife's infidelity but not of my plan, as I couldn't risk it since he's a bit of a blabbermouth. We'll fast forward now to October. That's when things seriously pick up. I've been in my faux affair for 3 months now, and Kathy is hyper-aware of the fact that I'm actively pulling away from her. It's been as long as the day I enacted my plan until the day she confronted me on October 20th, 2020, that I'd even touched her. No hugs, no kisses, no initiation of intimacy, nothing. Not like she needed it, she was still effing AP, just at his place or at motels. That afternoon, she calls me at work, which wasn't rare before all this began but certainly hadn't happened in a while. She asked me to come straight home after work, saying she had something important to tell me. I'm not going to lie to you, I half believed she was going to come clean about her infidelity. But she, of course, didn't. Instead, I get home to her asking me if I was unhappy with her. The effing nerve. She cited the fact that I'd been spending way too much time away from home, that I didn't show her affection anymore, and that our sex life had completely died. She told me she was worried I was pushing her away because I was resentful of how she treated me during the months I was rehabbing my knee. And then came the punchline. She effing asked if I was cheating on her. I fell out on the floor laughing hysterically. It wasn't because I was laughing off the notion of being unfaithful. It was actually me laughing at the sheer irony of what was happening in front of my eyes. I'm tearing up, pounding on the floor in complete hysterics for a good 2 minutes before I compose myself enough to answer. I sat up, brushed myself off, kissed the top of her head, and went about settling in for the night. Later that night, as I'm in my office, I decided to see what she was telling AP after that brief conversation. So, I fired up the app, and sure enough, they were texting in real time. She told AP, I know he's cheating on me. I asked him tonight, and he literally laughed in my face. He fell on the floor and laughed for like 5 minutes. He doesn't even care how I feel anymore. I don't know how or why, but he's gone. I know I've lost him. This is karma, I know it. The smile I had on my face reading that must have resembled the Cheshire Cat. She was breaking. AP attempted to console her, saying that if I cared enough for her, she wouldn't have had to come to him to give her what I wasn't providing. But the tone of her response told me she was having doubts. She had the nerve to step out of our marriage because I was unable to fill my role as a husband due to legitimate injury and kept the affair going for nearly an entire year. But the idea of her losing me to another woman was enough to make her waver. What an effing weakling. During all of this, I was also exacting the second part of my plan for payback, getting all of my financial affairs in order. In September, I met with a family attorney to get the ball rolling on divorce papers. New York is an at-fault state when it comes to divorce, and the overwhelming amount of proof I'd gathered displaying Kathy's infidelity pretty much solidified I could nail her to the effing wall in a divorce case. My lawyer instructed me to get all of my financials in order in preparation for whatever division of assets might come. As a result, I went one step further, secretly pulling all of my money out of our joint account and putting it in my personal account. I also started shopping around for an apartment as part of phase 2. We're now in November, and I've not changed my behavior. In fact, I've ramped it up. This is where my friend Tina comes into play. For context, Tina and Kathy have never been what you call close. Kathy has always seen Tina as a threat, as she's my closest female friend. There's always been an implied "I don't trust her" from Kathy regarding Tina. She's never addressed it directly, but it's obvious to anyone who pays attention. Conversely, Tina's never been a big fan of Kathy. Early in me and Kathy's relationship, Tina called attention to how Kathy was pretty much imposing herself into our little circle of friends, whereas I didn't do the same with Kathy's set of friends. That irked Tina because she knew why Kathy was doing it. Among Kathy's circle, even now, there are no male friends aside from AP, whereas Tina is the only girl in my circle. Tina had been stuck overseas due to the virus and finally returned to New York City on November 3rd. Oz, Joey, and I decided we were going to celebrate her return with a night at Joey's house for dinner and drinks. There were only 5 of us: Oz, Joey, Joey's wife, who is also Tina's sister, Tina, and myself, sticking to CDC guidelines. Tina, being the evil mastermind she is, came up with an evil idea to trigger Kathy. She suggested we take some photos in the same vein as the photos I discovered of Kathy and AP months prior and post them to my Facebook. And that's just what we did. Kathy got wind of it on the 5th. As I'm guessing, a few friends noticed my updates and saw how uncomfortably close I was with Tina. This really effed her mind up because she still believed I was cheating, and I can almost guarantee she wanted to accuse Tina. But she knew that Tina had been stuck in Europe for the majority of the year. Still, it didn't stop her from attempting to dress me down that night for being so, as she said, handsy in the pics. I saw this as a golden opportunity to deliver the lead jab for my knockout blow. I said, "So what about the pics with you and AP from last year? He was pretty handsy in them, but did you see me get bent out of shape over it, dear?" In headlights, it was the first time I even mentioned the dude's name throughout all of this. The hamster wheel in her head started reeling in real time as she tried to explain away those pics. To that point, she hadn't even known I saw them. That's how little I use Facebook. When I actually do post something, it's like an event to people, which is why the pics with Tina specifically got so much traction among our circles. From that night, Kathy was being extra specially clingy and attentive to me, like annoyingly so. She was trying to initiate affection and intimacy with me, and I'd stonewall her at every chance. All the while, I'm still archiving everything she's saying to AP. By this point, I'd long since gone numb. Any desire I might have had to save my marriage was dead. I checked up the day I enacted the first phase of my plan. She's confiding in him that I've gotten worse, that she doesn't know what to do, and she feels like I absolutely hate her. I do. Then comes the bombshell. She says she can't see him anymore. The guilt is too much for her, and she feels like karma is suffocating her. She can't risk losing me. She says that she loves AP deeply, but she's still in love with me, and she has to save her marriage before she loses me. No, my dear, you're about 8 months too late for that. AP loses his shit saying such lovely things as, "He doesn't love you the way I love you, and you're making a mistake. You can't just throw me away like this." That text chain would be the last they'd have until about 3 weeks ago. Throughout the remainder of November into December, Kathy is stuck in limbo. She's trying to gauge where my headspace is and is still unable to tell if I'm actually being unfaithful. Meanwhile, AP is steadily blowing up her phone daily, but she's not responding to him. I'd see her check her phone often, then quickly put it away. Meanwhile, phase 2 of the plan was now officially complete. The divorce papers were done. I'd found a studio apartment in Co-op City and signed a 2-year lease on it. All of my money was in my personal account, and I was ready to throw my haymaker. So, we're now at Thanksgiving. My oldest and his girlfriend were hosting a small gathering of our immediate families. My oldest girlfriend is studying to be a chef, and she did all the cooking herself. As I had to keep up appearances of nothing being wrong between Kathy and me, I initiated affection with her several times that evening. The gestures didn't go unnoticed by her, as she reveled in it. Bear in mind, this was the first time I touched this woman since I kissed the top of her head the night she confronted me in October, so just about 2 months. Not gonna lie, I felt repulsed doing it, but I had to. I couldn't risk the plan and me being distant to her in the face of my boys, my oldest girlfriend, and her parents would set off alarms. My youngest decided he wanted to stay over with his big bro for the night, so Kathy and I headed home. On the drive home, she thanked me for being so good to her and said, "I don't know what you're going through, baby, but I'm here for you." I had to hold off busting out in maniacal laughter again and responded, saying, "I know, I just need time." So for the first time, realistically since springtime, we had sex that night. I figured, F it, with what I'm about to do, may as well get some action before I delete her from my existence. I won't go into detail, but it wasn't lovemaking. When I was finished, she was a lump of flesh laying there, trying to figure out the direction of the truck that ran her over. No cuddling or anything after, I just got up, showered, and went to sleep in my office. To her confusion, though, I used a condom for the first time in 2 damn decades, I did. She was definitely perplexed by it, but she didn't ask questions. I sure as hell wasn't going in raw, knowing that she'd been doing so with AP for months at that point. I wake up the next day and check my handy-dandy spy app, and for the first time in weeks, she responded to AP. The dude went full novella, professing his love for her, saying she was wasting her time trying to rekindle a flame in me that had died, that she'd been in a prison with me for 23 years and deserved to experience the love and affection of a man who would cherish her. Mind you, this dude is 27, 5 years older than our oldest son. What a great high-quality simp she chose to blow up our marriage and destroy the home we built for this dude, pretty boy with a soft side. She responded, saying pretty much the same thing she said when they last talked, that she loves him and enjoyed their time together, but she can't lose me. I'm still the love of her life, but she'll always have a place for him in her heart. They can still be friends if he chooses, but the physical relationship between them is over. He begged her to see him one last time that week, and, yep, you guessed it, she said yes. One more for the road, right? Who am I to say anything? That's what I did to her the previous night. Of course, I added all of that to the archive I'd compiled. December 4th is when Phase 3, the final phase of Operation Shinobi Ghost, started. The divorce papers were in hand, my new place of residence was set up, and now I had to slowly start moving my stuff out of the house. But first, I had to break the news to my boys. I called my oldest to the house that Friday night, had them join me in my office, and laid everything on the table. Not the specifics, but that their mother had been cheating on me for over a year, and I was going to be filing for divorce soon. My 17-year-old was especially shaken up by this because he himself had recently experienced his first taste of infidelity. His first girlfriend had cheated on him just 4 months prior. Seeing his broken heart a second time at the idea that his own mother was capable of doing this hit him hard. My oldest took it a lot better and suggested taking his brother in to live with him until this blows over, to which I agreed. We packed up some of his stuff, and he asked me if I was gonna be okay. I told him, yes, son, I'm going to be alright, and so are you. We're going to be alright, I promise. And then they were off. The hardest part was now over, and it was time to arm the nukes. Over the next few weeks, day by day, Oz would help me get a little of my most sensitive stuff out of the house. I gave him a list of all the definite stuff to grab while Kathy and I were at work and left him the spare key. This was all stuff Kathy wouldn't notice was missing unless you told her it was gone. I'd also gotten a new phone and phone number and told everyone who needed to know, Oz, Joey, Tina, my boys, Big Sis, and my mother, my new contact info. Meanwhile, I kept up the ruse with Kathy, and she's none the wiser, trickling bits and pieces of affection to her just to keep her off the trail. While she's still in contact with AP, not to the extent that they'd been prior, but there's still an emotional thing happening. The fog is faint, but it's still there. All the while, I gather everything, and I do mean everything. Every bit of data I've archived since I started the plan, call logs, texts, pics, emails, everything. I start making printouts, folks. I must have spent over $1,500 on Staples supplies, printer ink, paper, binders, the works. I cataloged everything in order, from the beginning of the affair until that last bit 2 weeks ago, December 16th. In the binders, 14 of them. I then put each one in a box and gift-wrapped each, addressing them to various people: my mother, my father, who passed 7 years ago, her parents, her 2 sisters, her brother, her HR department. Did I forget to mention AP works for the same company, and there's an expressed rule against intercompany relationships because of the nature of what she does, several of her friends, AP, and AP's parents. I lugged all of those efforts to the post office and shipped them all out on December 16th, ETA for delivery December 22nd to 24th, perfect. So, we're now at Christmas Eve. Kathy comes home around the usual time. No idea if she'd seen AP. I'd stopped tracking her on the app the 18th, figured I'd gotten all the mileage I needed from it. As per usual, she showers, hangs out with me a bit, and I blow her back out on the living room couch. I know I'm an effing a-hole, and she turns in for the night. The final phase was upon me at long last. The nuke I'd been arming since June was finally about to be launched. In the middle of the night, I woke up and wrapped up one of the 3 remaining binders with the divorce papers taped to the inside cover and set it on my side of the bed with a note that said, "Merry Christmas" on it. Next to it, I left my old phone and the business card of my lawyer. I packed up the remainder of my most needed things, enough to fill 2 backpacks, and I left my home that I spent 23 years in for the last time. That, my friends, was 1 week ago. To Kathy, I am completely off the grid, gone, shadow ghosted. She's blocked on Facebook, but still hasn't blocked me, for some reason. So I'm keeping tabs on the fallout. It's absolutely glorious. My packages have reached everyone I sent them out to, and Kathy is getting crucified. Her youngest sister completely dressed her down. Both of her parents have condemned her. My mom absolutely destroyed her, like holy poop. I know my mom has a mean streak, but the things she called Kathy were uneffing. She's been frantically trying to find out if anyone knows where I am, but those that do aren't saying a word. All over her Facebook feed, she's desperately trying to reach me, because I'm guessing she knows I'm likely looking, but I'm not saying an effing word to her without my lawyer present. That'll be the next time I share oxygen with her. She's got no way of spinning the narrative to paint me as the bad guy because I've exposed her to everyone who matters to her. And from what a mutual friend who works in the same company as her says, she and AP apparently are being put on administrative leave as of tomorrow. Chances are she'll be going into 2021 unemployed. As for the final 2 binders, well, one has been turned over to my lawyer as my final bit of evidence for my impending divorce, and the last one I put in my storage unit to be burned in Joey's fire pit when the divorce is final. Do I feel guilty about this? No, not even in the slightest. 23 years I did right by this woman. I gave her the home she wanted, I gave her the family she wanted, I gave her the life I felt we both deserved, and I loved her unconditionally. Never have I faltered. Never have I strayed. Never have I even entertained the notion of breaking my vows. When an issue came up that I felt was affecting our marriage, I came to her and told her, and we sorted it out as best we could. She opted to find comfort in another man's bed. Rather than come to me and say she was unhappy with our sex life at the time, she decided to step out with a young punk who gave her the tingles. So no, I have no sympathy for what I did. Or for her. She can burn in hell for all I care. The most I stand to lose is my house, a car, and maybe a couple $100 a month in alimony, but seeing as the divorce is filed under the statute of adultery and New York State is at fault, that might get waived with the insurmountable amount of evidence I provided. As far as I'm concerned, she's dead to me. Christmas Day was the first full day I spent in my new apartment. It's still a work in progress as I have more stuff I want to get, but overall, I've made it my home since I'm going to be here for at least 2 years. My boys and my eldest son's girlfriend came over and spent a good portion of the day with me. His girlfriend brought over treats she'd made and also whipped up a really nice meal. I got to sit and talk with my sons in a way I hadn't done in a really long time, and it was nice. My big sis also came over with more goodies and hung out with us. It had been the first time she'd seen her nephews in nearly a year. Having all of them around did me some real good, because if I were by myself, I think I would have just drank myself into a stupor. Everyone cleared out around 8-ish, and I decided I wanted to go hang out with Joey and his wife, Claudia. I hung out with them for a couple of hours, had a couple of drinks, and then went back home. The next big development happened last week, on the 29th of December. Around midday, I got a text from Tina asking if I was busy that night. I, of course, wasn't, so we agreed to meet up after I got off work. She showed up, and we went to a diner not far from where I work in New York City. We're doing indoor dining at 25% capacity thanks to the pandemic, but there's mostly no trouble getting seats because so many of us opt not to dine out as much these days, regardless. So, after we were seated and ordered our food, Tina pretty much laid all of her cards on the table. Honestly, I knew this was coming. She basically confessed that she's liked me all the way back since we were teenagers but never got the chance to tell me since Kathy swooped in and scooped me up. For context, I've known Tina longer than Kathy by 2 years. As I mentioned earlier, she's been the fourth point of my social square, alongside myself, Oz, and Joey. We were the social outcasts in high school, the raver kids who didn't fit into any of the other cliques. Back then, Tina had a weight problem and was diabetic. She was the heavy-set goth chick who was super cool, but no guy would ever give her a second glance. But we always had chemistry. These days, Tina is a personal trainer and yoga instructor. She was the ugly duckling who grew into one hell of a beautiful swan, if I must say. Long story short, we decided that upon the finalization of my divorce, we are going to start seeing each other. Yes, I slept with her that night, took her back to my new place, and we had a grand old time. Am I ashamed of sleeping with her? Hell no. Tina's been a better friend to me than Kathy ever was. That's not saying Kathy wasn't my best friend, but throughout the near quarter of a century I've known Tina, she's always supported me. As I learned that day, she willingly took a step back from her own feelings to allow me to pursue and eventually start a life with Kathy. That resonated with me on a level I didn't think it would. That kind of selflessness toward another person is the definition of real love. I know it sounds like I'm just trying to justify in my head that sleeping with her was the right decision, but to me, it was, and I plan on exploring what's to come with Tina with total commitment. Yesterday, I met my wife and her lawyer to discuss the divorce. It's now been 2 weeks since I ghosted my soon-to-be ex-wife. This past Monday, I got a phone call from my lawyer, stating that Kathy's attorney had scheduled a meeting for us to discuss the terms of the divorce on January 6, 21, which was yesterday. I met with him on Tuesday morning to discuss the terms I'm wanting. Long story short, I'm going for an uncontested divorce under the grounds of marital neglect from Kathy. My terms include a full division of assets, and I'll sell my half of the house ownership to her. We keep our respective vehicles, and I keep my cabin in the Poconos. Under the pretenses of marital neglect, she won't receive spousal support from me. Regarding my 17-year-old son, he's free to choose who he wants to reside with following the divorce, which will most likely be me. So, Wednesday came, and I showed up at my lawyer's office dressed in my Johnny Cash best. My wife and her lawyer were there, and she looked like she was barely holding it together. I gave a stone face throughout the meeting. Her lawyer presented an offer for terms of reconciliation, but I shot them down almost as soon as she finished listing the details of the request. We eventually agreed to a legal separation leading to an uncontested divorce. The only revision is that I will pay her $653 a month of temporary spousal support to cover the cost of utilities until she's gainfully employed again. This support will last up to a year after the finalization date of the divorce. The meeting ended, and my lawyer gave me some final words before telling me he'll be in touch to update me on the progress of the filing. When I left the lawyer's office, Kathy chased me down and asked if we could talk. I decided to give her that chance. She held it together fairly well in the meeting, but outside, the waterworks flowed. She said she was sorry and that she never meant for things to go as far as they did. She said she never expected to fall in love with AP but knew that when she thought I was cheating, it was wrong to betray her own husband in such a way. She asked if I could ever find it in my heart to forgive her and maybe, in a few years, we could try to start over. She couldn't imagine what her life was going to be without me. I told her to start imagining it soon because this would be the last time I ever spoke to or saw her. I said that my 17-year-old son is almost a man and old enough to make his own choices for his future. I mentioned that I gave her half of my life and every ounce of love I had unconditionally. She, in her own words, fell in love with another man. There is absolutely no chance of me ever forgiving her. I told her that all the love I had for her was slowly killed over all those months when she confided and professed her love to AP rather than coming to me and telling me she had any issues with our relationship. I mentioned that I loved who she once was but hate who stands before me. I said that if I never see her again, it'll be too soon. We were on the sidewalk in Midtown Manhattan, and she was making a scene, crying her eyes out. A couple of people walked by and gave side glances, but I didn't care. I wasn't about to publicly humiliate her. I had already socially and professionally exposed her. I needed to get the last bit of emotion I had for her out. I told her I didn't regret the 23 years I spent being her husband. I regretted that in 23 years, she decided the easy way out was the better option. Then, I delivered a final blow, saying that I thought she was mine for 23 years, but it turned out it was just my turn. I walked away, put in my rake-ins, and left the scene. Later that night, her father called me and apologized. He praised me for always being a good man to his daughter, told me he was ashamed of her, and said that he raised her better. He also informed me that she got fired for her involvement with AP. He got canned as well. On Facebook, I symbolically changed my relationship status to divorced. Yeah, it's not final yet, but in my eyes, it's over and done. I said when I make a post on Facebook, it's an event, so many folks started hitting me up over Messenger, asking questions, and I laid it all out that I filed for divorce with Kathy earlier in the day. Of course, Tina called me, shocked that I pulled the trigger so fast. She was already aware that I was in the process of it when we spoke. I asked her if she could come over, and she rushed to my side. We knocked boots again, but this time she stayed the night. We laid in my bed and talked into the wee hours of the morning. I've completely blocked my soon-to-be ex-wife on all social outlets. She has had no means of reaching me since I left her on Christmas Eve. However, some of our mutual friends still do. Last night, I was hanging out in my apartment, and I got a voice call notification on Messenger from one of these friends. This friend hadn't abandoned her following me exposing her affair. She wasted no time when I answered and said she had gone to check on Kathy, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and found her passed out in the bedroom foaming at the mouth, with 2 empty pill bottles next to her. Kathy is in the ICU in critical but stable condition, and the doctor said that she would likely pull through. The news hit me, but I decided that Kathy is not my problem anymore. I told the friend that Kathy's not my concern, and she clearly decided she wanted to take the easy way out rather than deal with the shame and agony of the 23-year marriage she blew up. I then told her friend that if Kathy's family was there, they could help her sort out the pieces. But as far as Kathy and I are concerned, there is no Kathy and I anymore. I ended the call. I've had a few hours to sleep on it, and my sons called me this morning asking if I knew about the situation. I told them yes, but I also let them know that if they want to be there and supportive of their mother, I will not hold it against them or judge them for it. She is their mother, after all. But I myself wash my hands of her and care little to nothing about what she does to or for herself anymore. They were a little taken aback by this, but respected my stance. Now that the news of her suicide attempt has broken, many of those friends who dropped her are all starting to surface again, saying that I need to be there for her. They argue that even despite what she did to me, I need to support her in her time of need. I've also been informed that her affair partner tried to visit her this morning but wasn't allowed because he's not family. I'm getting dogpiled on to go see her, but I feel nothing for this woman anymore. I haven't for a very long time. I checked out during the process of getting my payback for her betrayal. I stand by the fact that I don't care at all about what she's done. In fact, it makes me hate her even more. She was the one who was unfaithful. She was the one who thought a near year-long affair with a guy 5 years older than her oldest son was worth destroying 23 years. And now that she has to face the consequences of her choices, she chooses the most selfish way of dealing with it. Even now, seeing as she's in all likelihood going to survive, she's cultivated immediate sympathy from everyone who took her to task, and I'm being made out to look like the jaded ex-husband unwilling to sympathize for her by most of her family. Not her dad. He's reached out to me over the last few hours and said he respects my decision. It's like I never even truly knew this woman. 23 years, and it comes to this. Yes, I know the way I broke things off with her may have put her in a poor mental state, but now a whole new can of worms has been opened up because either she had a complete mental breakdown and decided to attempt self-harm, or she made an extremely risky and calculated move to call for favor from people who just weeks prior condemned her for betraying me. I'm being made out to be the bad guy, but I want to be perfectly clear, I'm not going to visit Kathy. She waived her right to me caring about her well-being. She did this the day she let her affair partner, AP, put himself into her life and betray our marriage. Some folks might perceive me as heartless, but I don't give an F about this woman anymore. I haven't for a very long time. She decided to betray me, and I'm glad to be rid of her. If it makes me the bad guy, so be it. I hold true to my convictions. She made the choice to betray me and put her needs above the needs of our marriage. So now, it's my turn to choose myself over everything else. She can deal with the consequences of her actions, and I wash my hands of her. She can do as she pleases. Let everyone else help her and fix her. My obligation to ever care about her well-being ended the day we signed the separation agreement. I just need to get this off my chest. If you're going to cast judgment on me for feeling how I feel, save it. Like I said above, after 23 years and 2 children, I never really knew this woman. After all, I have no sympathy for her, and I never will. Let her effing rot. Tina's been the MVP the last 24 hours. I got notified of the situation while I was still at work. I called Tina and told her, and she was ready to roll to do whatever was needed. She went and picked up 17, who almost had a nervous breakdown from what 22 told me, and brought him to my apartment. Yes, I gave her a key. She stayed with him until I got home after cutting out of work and helped me calm my boy down. She's a godsend. Today, against everything I decided previously, I went to see Kathy. She's been out of the hospital for 4 days now, and believe it or not, it was Tina who convinced me I need to see her. She said the only way I let go of the contempt I feel for her is to see her one last time in her weakened state. So around 6 p.m., I called her for the first time since I served her. Her hello wasn't the bright and bubbly hello I'd known for over 2 decades. Her voice was hoarse and weak. The moment she heard my voice, she immediately began crying. It took almost 3 minutes for her to regain composure enough to talk again. Before she could say anything, I told her I was coming to see her within the day, by 8 p.m., and she agreed. It's about an hour and a half from Co-op City, where my new apartment is, to my old home. So I grabbed a bite to eat from the local pizzeria and started on my way there. I got there about 7:47 p.m., and she was already at the door before I pulled into the driveway. As I came near, I could see the toll her actions had taken on her. She was noticeably thinner, the unhealthy kind of thin. As a whole, she looked like the Walking Dead. The first thing she did was try to come in for a hug, and I stopped her cold. She got the hint that I wasn't there to console her and backed off immediately. We went inside and sat in the living room. Almost immediately, Kathy told me she wanted to come clean about everything. She said she couldn't live with the guilt of what she did to me and the boys. From the day we signed the separation agreement, she went into a downward spiral of guilt and agony that led to her suicide attempt. Her friend, the one that called me from the hospital, had noticed her behavior and started coming over to check on her. She said the doctors told her that if she hadn't been found just an hour more, she would have succeeded. She admitted to failing me as a wife, that her falling for AP was wrong, as was her choice not to pull back when she knew she was getting too deep. She also apologized for sharing the many intimate details of our marriage and speaking ill of me to him. She said she believed in her head that she was doing the right thing, but ultimately, when she thought I was cheating, it all hit her like a ton of bricks. The feeling of betrayal was suffocating, and she had to get out as soon as possible, but it was obviously too late by then. She then asked me at what point did I stop caring, to which I said, the night she confronted me with the notion of me cheating with the fervor that she did, knowing full well that she'd been sleeping with AP for months at that point. It was obviously too late by then. She then asked me at what point did I stop caring, to which I said the night she confronted me with the notion of me cheating with the fervor that she did, knowing full well that she'd been sleeping with AP for months at that point. I lost all respect for her, and it steeled my resolve to enact my plan. She told me that when she woke up Christmas morning and found the gift I left, she was over the moon until she opened it. That's when she realized what it was and how much I had known. She literally went mad and hasn't set foot in our bedroom since. She was frantically trying to find if anyone knew where I was. But when she went on Facebook to ask, she started getting thrashed by friends and family about what she had done. But she had no idea how everyone knew so fast. That's when I told her about the other binders. The look of shock on her face was priceless. It all dawned on her that I did this to her. Everything she's gone through, her friends turning on her, her family shaming her, and yes, even her losing her job, was my doing. She just fell silent and shut down. After that, I took the time to go use the bathroom. It was in shambles, the mirror was broken, her skincare products were all over the place, and the tub looked like it hadn't been cleaned since they took her to the hospital. When I came back out to the living room, she had her face in her hands, weeping. I can honestly say I felt nothing. No more anger, no more rage, and absolutely not a shred of pity. They say the opposite of love is indifference. Looking at her, that's all I felt. She looked up at me and said, I screwed everything up. I ruined us, and I have no idea what to do. I can't do this by myself. I told her she's got her family, her friend who found her, and our sons, but she doesn't have me. She never will ever again. I told her I came to give her closure from the ordeal she just subjected herself to, but the moment I walk out that door, I'm never looking back. The topic of AP comes up not long after she tells me he reached out to her 2 days ago. They talked for a couple of hours, and it ended with her telling him he needs to move on with his life, find a younger woman, and forget she exists. The remainder of the conversation was Kathy apologizing for her betraying me and asking again if this was really the end. I looked her dead in the eyes with no hesitation and said, yes, it's been over long before I served the divorce notice on Christmas. I felt that was my cue to depart. No words were said because what more could be said? I left her sitting on the couch, closed the door behind me, got in my car, and drove home. It's 2:56 a.m. as I'm typing this. I needed to get this out while it's fresh in my head. This is it. The saga of Kathy is done. 17 and I are both scheduled for counseling in the coming weeks. Tina and I are still going strong and sticking to the plan of keeping things under wraps until my divorce is final. I'm staying active and motivated and looking forward to a future with a woman I know will cherish and honor me because she's done so from the shadows for decades. It's time for me to focus on the life ahead of me. So this will probably be the last time I post for a while. Maybe I'll come back with an update when the divorce is official. To everyone who has sent me words of encouragement and well wishes, thank you. To all of those who praised me for my plan of revenge, I can honestly say I wish it never came to it, but if I had to go back and do it again, I wouldn't change a single thing I did, aside from maybe doing more to AITA than just getting him fired. It's been just over 2 months to the day since I served my wife divorce papers and a month since my last update, which I said was likely going to be my final one. But a lot has gone down since that post. And seeing as I came back to this account and saw hundreds of messages and responses still after my last post, I'll go ahead and let everyone know what's going on. But before all that, I sincerely have to say thank you again for all of the support and kindness that's been sent my way over my plight. I'm as thankful for all of the love I've gotten on Reddit as I am the love I've gotten from my family. First, I want to start with an aspect a lot of people have been concerned about: 17, my youngest son. Just days after my last post, he began counseling. I went with him his first 2 sessions, and he's gone by himself for everyone since. He goes 2 times a week, and it has drastically helped. For the most part, he's doing fine, but I can say that his trust in relationships has been completely shattered. The lasting effects of his own experience with infidelity, coupled with his mother's actions of cheating and her attempted suicide, have left a pretty big scar that I think may take decades to heal. I come to find out his experience was even worse than he let on. He actually caught his ex-girlfriend making out with a guy he thought was a friend, but it turned out the guy was only getting buddy-buddy with him to get to her. He never told me this aspect of his breakup. Next up, there's my counseling. I have a bit of an anger problem. Which is strange, because I've always been a reserved, controlled, and stoic man. But this whole experience evidently woke a sleeping dragon in me that's a pure fire breather. I've talked about everything with my therapist, and when I say everything, I mean everything. When I explained to him the extent of what I did to my ex, he was both impressed and appalled. Not the reaction I was expecting. I've also been clinically diagnosed as a sociopath, which doesn't surprise me at all, given everything I did. My sessions are not so much dramatic, they're more about organizational unpacking, all of the things going on in my head regarding the implosion of my marriage and trying to find balance. Now, for the elephant in the room, Tina. I have no idea where I'd be without this woman. Neither did I ever expect to have such a caring, empathetic, nurturing woman by my side to carry me through all of this. We are still very much going strong, and try as we have to keep our ongoing relationship under wraps, it's pretty much out of the bag within our group. She just gets me, she always has since we were teens, and since she knows the pain of having the person you've invested your life into cheat on you as well, she does all she can to help me cope with my feelings. We split time between staying at her place and my own. The discussion has come up about moving in with each other, but her 5-year-old puts a kibosh on that idea. My place isn't big enough for 3 people, and I'm locked into my lease until 2022. So for now, we'll keep splitting time between when her daughter is away with her family. Tina's at my place, and when she has her daughter, I'm at hers. Speaking of her daughter, I absolutely adore her, and she's taken a shine to me. I wish I could find the words to truly put into perspective how important Tina has been to me throughout all of this. If you haven't taken the time to read my previous entries, Tina has secretly been in love with me since we were sophomores in high school. But she was an ugly duckling back then who thought she had no chance with me. She actively sat by and watched me chase after, date, and marry my soon-to-be ex-wife Kathy, knowing how she felt. Well, over 25 years, she held this secret until a week after I had my divorce hearing, where we met for food, and she laid everything on the table. I consider myself lucky to have her in my life. We constantly talk about what the future holds between us. As we've both been burned by marriage, we're definitely not going that route. But we have discussed a civil union. We'll probably wait a little while before going that route, but it's pretty much been decided between the two of us that we are it for each other. Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please click on the subscribe button. It will be a great help.